Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name's Elizabeth Venafro, and I'm the Director of Marketing here at Omnilord. And we're so glad to have Carl Orsi with us today. He is a retired police sergeant who's going to be speaking to an issue that unfortunately is more relevant than ever right now, which is officer safety and how we can potentially arm law enforcement with more information when responding to calls. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Carl, just to give a brief overview of your background.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending this webinar. I spent my entire career in law enforcement at the city of Berkeley, where I was a sergeant, and I did many years in patrol and special assignments and finally retired as a sergeant. While at Berkeley PD, I was on the tactical member of the Barricaded Subject Hostage Negotiation Team, which is a precursor to SRT. During my time on the team, I responded to several callouts, including the Henry's Public House incident, in which 7 people were shot, 1 was killed, and over 30 people were held hostage. One of my assignments was also managing the city's public safety dispatch center, where we dispatch both police and fire units to calls for service. And after retirement, I was injured on a job and I was retired out. After 18 years, I worked for an international software company where I rose to the level of director by using skills that I acquired as a police officer. And in 2016, I started Thin Blue Line Coffee, an online coffee shop where a portion of every sale is donated to a police charity. And I started it so I could give back to the profession and the people who have gifted and guided and influenced my life up to this point. Recently, I was approached by the CEO of Omnilord to evaluate a new product they had created named Gun Detect, and I was very impressed, which brings us to today's presentation.
Great, thanks, Carl. Now, just for those who aren't as familiar with Omnilord, just give you a very brief overview. We were actually founded in 2004, and we started out in the emergency mass notification market. In fact, we were the first to come to that market and establish that market. We continue to be an innovation leader for over 2,500 customers, ranging in industries from education to healthcare to manufacturing, private and public sector organizations. But we've since branched out into other product areas aside from just emergency mass notifications. And that's one of the products that we're going to be talking about today. It's a preventative type product that provides more information to first responders before the incident occurs. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Carl.
Thank you. In police work, as you well know, a lot of the job is unpredictable, but with some certainty, you know what will happen. You just don't know when it'll happen or under what circumstances it'll happen. An example would be making a felony car stop. You don't know why you're going to be making the stop. It might be the result of a robbery, a domestic violence assault, a shooting, but you know you will make a felony car stop sometime in the future. So you train for it. You can't predict the event, so you plan for how you will respond to the event. And as we know, history doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes. And with studies of past events, we can get a pretty good idea where certain events will happen in the future, and we should plan for them also. Okay, this presentation concerns itself with law enforcement's response to active shooters and how technology available today can aid with the response and at the same time improve officer safety. As the definition of an active shooter implies, we're talking about incidents where the suspects are armed with a gun and incidents in which prompt action can have a potential impact on the outcome of the situation. From FBI statistics, you can see the number of active shooter events is increasing. And this chart only shows up to 2018, but as we've observed in recent news from Atlanta and Boulder, active shooter events are not going away. After the terrible event at Columbine High School, police agencies realized that we needed a different response than waiting for the SWAT team to arrive when dealing with an active shooter. We began to train our officers to immediately respond to stop these shooters from doing more harm. We understood that we needed to distract, engage, and to end the situation as quickly as possible with whatever information we had available at the time. And so we respond to calls. And here's an example.
Copy, you're responding to you at 1177. Can you respond to UCC?
77 copies, responding to UCC.
Copy, 1177, responding to UCC. 1044.
Fire dispatch 1172.
1172, go ahead.
1172 is responding to UCC. 1171 covering 252's area.
I have additional information. Stand by for that. I copy 262812.
8183, 8185,
8183, 8185, 1044.
Exchanging shots with him. He's in the classroom on the, it's going to be the southeast side of St. Paul.
Copy, Rosebrook 17, exchanging gunshots right now with the Malleys in the classroom on the southeast side of Snyder Hall.
30 Rosebrook 17, unconfirmed report that he's got a long gun.
Copy, Rosebrook 17, unconfirmed report. He has a long gun. 1045. Located next to the library, there are about 35 people in the hall piled in. The campus center is on lockdown. 183 was turning onto College Road, and looks like they're going to shut down the road.
We started listening to this recording 6 minutes after the original broadcast of an active shooter at Umpqua Community College. In those prior 6 minutes, there is no description of the suspect provided, none. We don't know what the person looks like, his or her clothing, their height, their weight, their age, nothing. We don't know what the shooter is armed with. And the location is not familiar to the officers responding, and there is limited information available to the officers. Then at 6:45 into the call, we get a report that the officers are exchanging gunfire with the suspect. But at 7 minutes, we still don't know what type of weapon the suspect has. Just unconfirmed reports that the shooter has a long gun. So these officers are exchanging rounds with the shooter, and they don't know what type of weapon the suspect is using to shoot at them. And as we know, that makes a huge difference in how you would respond based on the weapon capacity, the effective range, the accuracy, penetration of a long gun versus a handgun. Like others in this profession, these officers are bravely responding to an active shooter call almost blind. They had no description of the shooter, none. They had basic knowledge of the location, and importantly, they had no description of the weapon. I can report that none of these officers were hurt during the response to this incident, which is a credit to their training, their skill, and to luck. Going back to our planning ahead from the slide 4, what if the locations we've seen in the past used by active shooters were equipped with technology that would aid in both the warning and response of potential victims and provide responders with more detailed information on the suspect and the suspect's whereabouts in almost real time? All this with equipment that is either already in place or available off the shelf. This is now possible.
Omnilord Gun Detect uses artificial intelligence to identify firearms on existing video surveillance systems in real time. After a two-step verification process, a group of administrators are instantly notified to confirm the threat and launch a scenario in seconds. For example, a lockdown scenario can notify subscribers via text message and phone call. Law enforcement and first responders can be summoned and provided with precise details of the shooter, weapon, time, and location. Digital signs and desktops can be alerted. A video conference launched with the emergency response team and an access control system can be initiated. All of this within seconds of detecting the firearm. Omnilord Gun Detect is now available. Implementation is quick, inexpensive, and can be easily tied to your existing camera system. Contact us today.
Okay, with Gun Detect, AI allows the monitoring of thousands of video feeds 24/7, 365, something that even a huge staff of employees would have difficulty managing. And the AI is looking for a specific, well-tested pattern of human gun connection and can identify it within seconds. False verifications are all but eliminated by having human interpret the alert. Automated responses are pre-configured into the tool to alert those of possible danger, to help people avoid the danger, and those whose job it is to respond to the danger. So if our duty as law enforcement is to save lives, including our own, then this is a tool that we want to have. Right now, most calls for active shooters reach law enforcement after they've already started shooting and all hell is broken out. Integrating with mass notification systems allows the system administrator to warn others to avoid the location where the armed suspect was seen and to seek safety, preventing more victims. Part of setting up the system is mapping and naming cameras. So as you know which camera is triggered, you know where and when it was triggered. As the suspects move about, more cameras are triggered. And you can actually see what the suspect looks like: clothing, race, sex, and importantly, the type of weapon they're carrying. The system triggers an event that is then viewed by a system admin, for example, a school officer or admin, security officer, that kind of thing, who then visually verifies the information before triggering a response to others. This can eliminate false alarms. The camera system triggers within 4 to 6 seconds. The admin then confirms the results and activates the response, which notifies first responders through preset response scenarios built into the system. Responders now have more information than they've ever had to respond efficiently and more safely than before. And then let's think about the investigation at the end. In the past, many hours were spent trying to identify the exact time camera that recorded the incident. Now, all that information is provided to investigators right when the situation is first detected. Some agencies have real-time crime centers, which actually monitor feeds from video feeds from the public. Detroit's Green Light Project is an example. But because there are so many feeds coming in, a 911 call is required to draw the agency's attention to a specific feed. Gun Detect would automatically bring that feed right up front and get people's attention right away. So if you have a company or a school that has a large gathering of people in your jurisdiction, you may want to talk to them about acquiring this technology to save lives and to help with your response to them should they need it. As law enforcement, we do have a duty to our communities to protect and save lives. But let's not forget that we also have a duty to protect our own brave officers who face this danger head on. If we have the ability to influence those in our community who would likely need such a response, I believe we have a duty and an obligation to see that they do.
All right, thanks so much, Carl. That was extremely helpful information, and I'm sure you folks have tons of questions. So we just ask that you write them in the chat box on the right of the screen, and we'll be happy to answer them in the next 10-15 minutes or so. So please go ahead and submit them now. Also, I just wanted to give you a heads up that we did record this presentation, and so we will be sending out the recording to everyone who registered following the event.
Okay. So we did get a few questions, and I'll start with the first one. And it says, will Gun Detect trigger on an open carry, since open carry is legal in a lot of states? And the answer to that is no. It's not going to detect with a gun that's an open carry in a holster unless the person has their hand on the weapon and a large part of the weapon is visible at the time. So it's So if you do have open carry in your state and they're walking through here, it should not detect on them unless there's that hand close to the person. There's another question. It says, can it detect concealed weapons? And at this time, no, it's only detecting weapons that are visible. So the gun has to be out and has to be in a person's hand or very close to their hand. We have another question that maybe Dave or Elizabeth, you may want to look at. Has to do with the cost of implementation.
Sure, I can maybe handle that. So it's priced by the number of cameras. So it really depends on whether you're monitoring a small number of cameras or you have many thousands of cameras. So it varies quite widely. Typically, it's a fraction of the cost, though, of having any humans monitor the system. Not even thinking about how difficult it would be to scale up human monitoring effectively across a large number of cameras. So it's typically priced at a few $100s per year for each camera.
Okay, thanks, Dave. I got another question in here, and it says, does this software use facial recognition, AI? And the answer to that is no. What it detects is a relationship between a human and a gun, and it's not designed or not set up to identify specific individuals. Let me see if we have some more questions. All right. Okay, here's another one. It says, staffing in our dispatch centers is always an issue. They're perpetually understaffed. Would this technology just be another feed that they'd have to monitor in our dispatch centers? And the answer to that is no, and that's the benefit of AI. If you have feeds that come into your dispatch center, for instance, you're like a real-time crime center and you actually have video feeds coming in from the outside, the AI is programmed to look at these things 24/7, 365 and alert and identify on a predefined person gun pattern. So they wouldn't have to look at it the whole time and monitor it. The only time they'd have to look at it is when the system gets triggered, and then that's the vetting process that you would determine if it's significant or not. Related to that is, if this is in a business, so that's the assumed place, let's say it's in a school or something like that, the alarm would trigger for them, they would vet it, they would send that information to you. And again, they're not looking at the monitors 24/7, 365. That's the beauty of AI. It's doing that for you. All right. So we got another great question here. It says, how could this work in a courthouse setting where you have scores of officers with holstered weapons and sometimes place their hand on top of their weapon to secure it in a crowded hallway? So this is kind of this is a great question, because this is a real thing, right? So you do want, in a courthouse, you do want to monitor that kind of stuff, because you do want to make sure that the only people who have the guns, even open carry is not allowed in most courthouses. So you want to make sure the people who have guns are actually people who should have guns. So this thing triggers, but that doesn't mean, so what it's doing is alerting you of the presence of someone with a gun, and then you vet that. So you don't have to, it's not like an all-out response. It would trigger, you would look at it, you'd say, oh no, that's, Officer Smith. And, and that's okay. And we can move on. And then if it triggers again, oh, that's Officer Bob. So there might be a little bit of you looking at it, triggering on those situations, but it doesn't mean that you have to have this full-out response. That's the human part, right? It's looking for that combination. When it sees that combination, it triggers. But then the human says, okay, this is something worth seeing or something worth acting on. So that's one thing in that situation. Okay, there's another question is here, and Dave, maybe you can answer this one. Has to do with, can you provide the camera system requirements that are needed?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So Gun Detect is designed to work with almost every camera system that's out there. So in particular, it can use an existing surveillance system that has been deployed. So anything that has been installed over the last, perhaps even as long ago as 10 years ago can be used, but it typically needs to be an IP network camera. So no old CCTV analog cameras, but a more recent network camera system. So it'll kind of integrate with those types of cameras, those types of video monitoring systems, and network video recorders. Very, very flexible. So it doesn't have to just be with a new camera system.
Okay. So let me see. We read. And it says, is this something you're trying to sell to police departments? That's no. Police departments are not the primary target for this. It's really the institutions that would have large groups of people where this type of incident may unfortunately occur. That's the biggest thing. It's the goal is to prevent these kinds of things from happening and having them installed in these types of businesses around you. And having them in a business, say you have a fulfillment center or something like that, having them in there adds safety for them, and it also adds to the safety and effectiveness of us, as officers responding. Not seeing too many more here. Okay. It says, how does it alert to a particular location? Dave, do you want to try that one and I'll work on it? I'll answer that question. So how does it alert to a particular location? So your cameras are set up in a location. So let's say you have a fulfillment center and the cameras are set up in there. So those cameras are set up there, it's a, I don't want to say it's a closed loop, but those cameras are set up with their own admin and all that kind of stuff. So when it detects a person with a gun, it's going to trigger the admin for that location. And then that person is then going to look at their alert and say, oh yes, this is, again, it's Officer Bob. It's not he just happened to have his hand on his gun, or, oh my God, this is someone with a gun in our area that shouldn't be there. Then they activate the alert. That then sends a signal out, predetermined, pre-programmed signals out to both the mass notification system, which then alerts the employees or the students or something to go and void a certain area, lock their doors, not come to campus, that kind of stuff. And at the same time, it sends a signal to the police department, and that's where you have like an agreement with the police department ahead of time saying, hey, when you get this alert, you'll know where you should respond. So that's how it's tied to the camera location. And also when you program the cameras to begin with, you put in location information in there that will transfer with the alert notification. So it's not only, oh, it's happening at XYZ company, it's happening at, oh, XYZ company, second floor, camera looking at the back door. So it can really narrow down the location of it, of the alert. Ready? So So I encourage you to ask questions. We've had a few great questions come in here. If anything, I'm not seeing any more right now. You can always send us questions in the future as you think about this. We're going to give you contact information to get hold of us. So we can always answer questions for you in the future when you sit back and you maybe look at this a second time and come up with a question. Otherwise, Elizabeth?
Yeah, so along those lines, just to kind of wrap things up here, if you do have any additional questions, we are going to be sending out, like I said, this recording to everyone who registered, and we will include contact information in there as well on how to find additional information. Also, a video demonstration if you're interested in really seeing how it works in particular. Like Carl just said, the target isn't necessarily police departments. Our hope is that this type of technology can not only help officers respond more effectively in these situations, but also keep officers safe. And so our hope is that by presenting this information to law enforcement, we can just bring awareness that this type of technology is out there, and hope that you're able to spread the word, and so that we can, keep everybody safe ultimately, which is what we all want. So like I said, we'll definitely send a follow-up email with that recording, and please feel free to reach out with other questions. Thanks so much. Appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.